Well then, the first ever F1 sprint race is in the books, but what was it like? I know you've got your own opinions, but that is what we are going to be discussing right here today on the Inside Line F1 podcast and Pits To Podium. Along with that, we discuss, well, was this experiment a good one for the long run? And more importantly, the one point that we all may end up ignoring in the heat of all this moment right now, it is, what about tomorrow's race? How impactful will the events of today be for all that we see on Sunday for the main Grand Prix? All of this on this short episode of the Inside Line F1 podcast and Pits to Podium. Well, hello there, folks. Welcome to the Inside Line F1 podcast. My name is Soumil Arora, joined as always by Kunal Shah, the former marketing head of the Force India F1 team. We've seen history happen, Kunal, finally. I think it's been a while since we've seen something quite like this. F1 taking initiative like this ever. But honest thoughts, though. Honestly, do you think this is a sustainable option for the long run? We've seen all that's happened today, but it's just raised a big question in everyone's mind today. It's so good to see all the discussions happening on the forums.
It is. It's history we made. We were a part of history, and let's take a step back. Should we have more F1 sprints? Technically, yes, we are going to have it twice, whether we like it or not, right? But the step back that we should try and take is to understand that Formula One is in a very unique space. We all want Formula One to change, but we don't want to sort of be the guinea pigs. That's how it could be seen as, right? And today we were all guinea pigs, so we are probably all feeling either ecstatic about the F1 sprint or, oh my God, what did we just witness, And I think we should just be a little more patient, for the F1 sprint, seeing how it all unfolds, to be honest. And in my view, we should continue down the F1 sprint with some tweaks, nomenclatures like who gets pole position. After yesterday's Hamilton heroics, it's unfortunate that his fantastic lap doesn't get him pole for the race tomorrow, for example. And then this whole challenge of not calling it a sprint race, everyone on broadcast was confused. Okay, what do we call it if we don't call it a sprint race? So just that. And one thing that really worked out for me, of course, apart from Fernando Alonso's start heroics, Soumil, was the fact that the new Parc Fermé regulations have made the weekend far more challenging. And that's what Max Verstappen alluded to in his post-sprint race interview. He said, we made some changes, and after FP1, we couldn't make those changes back. He was making a reference to the fact that Hamilton has more top-line speed by virtue of being the fastest of all 20 drivers, whereas Max Verstappen has the slowest top-line speed because he's the slowest of all 20 drivers. So some things that worked, some things that didn't, and I'm willing to have an open mind when it happens again in, I think it's Monza.
Yep, Monza it is, coming in a few months right now. But let's be objective. I don't think that impacted Verstappen a bit too much. More on the incidents about this race in a few moments. Let's first discuss the format. Let's first discuss what we genuinely think about this race as such. And honestly, I just felt that it felt a little bit artificial because, of course, what we eventually saw with Fernando Alonso, more on that in a second, in depth that is, but his heroics in the first lap, he got, I think, 6 odd positions that he gained on the very first lap, crazy driving. But eventually he did end up dropping down those positions. Now, if he can't sustain it on his long run pace in 30 minutes, eventually he just starts low down. And basically on Sunday, we don't get to see the excitement of, oh, Fernando Alonso, he's gained X amount of positions. How can he sustain? Because if he can't do it in 30 minutes, it seems a bit hard to imagine that he can keep up with those gained positions over the course of a 1 hour and 30 minute race. So seems like that surprise qualifying starter performance sort of variable that we get to see on a normal race weekend has just been preponed in a way to Saturday now. And that makes it sort of artificially interesting. I'm sort of looking too much into the future right now. The point is, we only have to wait and watch. But for now, I think it delivered as a strong 30-minute entertainment option on a Saturday evening, as it was intended to do, to be honest.
Yes, it was. And that's a very good point you've made, Soumil, that it's probably just brought the entertainment forward by one day.
Yeah.
And, we still have one more start, one more opening lap tomorrow. And if Fernando Alonso repeats his heroics from today to tomorrow, he'll be P2 at the end of the first lap. So that's probably going to be worth it as well. So, but it's great to have one session on each day that sort of has more meaning. And like we said in the preview, that we actually have more meaningful sessions or sessions, connected to the business of racing than free practice sessions. And, from what we saw today, even free practice too, we could literally have scrapped that, Somal.
Yeah, we genuinely could. It was just rather pointless in a way. But the racing, Kunal, I think everyone is very keen to know this very perspective of this side of this race. As I mentioned, it feels partially inflated in a way, the excitement of this one. But honestly, on the whole though, is this going to be replicated all the way through? It's hard to give an answer right now. But it feels a bit bloated right now. It feels that it's not meant to happen. But this today, of course, due to Perez's accident and due to what we saw with Alonso, due to what we saw with Russell, it was sort of made extra exciting. But then again, if you come to think of it, it would be like that famous Italian cook who said, if my grandmother had wheels, she'd be a bike. So I think we just have to take it as it is and enjoy it for what it was today.
Enjoy it for what it was. And, the question that I kept asking myself when doing some bit of analysis was, would the top 10 have been any different than what we got right from qualifying? And the truth is that George Russell made it to Q3. Technically he's in the top 10. Fernando Alonso, big gainer as well. Kimi Raikkonen, those starting on the soft tires sort of gained as well, I would say. And the biggest loser has to be Checo Perez, who, by the way, Soumil, is the winner of today's Manscaped lawn mower moment without an absolute doubt. It's unfortunate. This was his third driver mistake in two races, or, okay, if you don't call today a race, two meaningful sessions, the Grand Prix in Austria and the sprint race in Great Britain. And it's uncharacteristic of Checo Perez to make so many mistakes.
It's a bit crazy. We've sort of not put him in the spotlight as much as we normally end up doing, but it's a bit strange. It's a bit strange to see him in this situation right now, not able to fire back, and he starts all the way at the back, more on what about the action could mean later on. But let's wrap up this topic. Let's wrap up the discussion about this experiment. So, 1 out of 3, we're I think a third of the way in. If you had to put a word on it, of course, you've given your opinion, Kunal. You want to see with a few more tweaks. But still, positive, negative, where do you put this, perhaps, on that list?
I'd say I'm more towards a positive, neutral aspect. I would say I liked the historical references. Like Sundaram put it, that it was 35 years ago that Formula One had a race on Saturday. This was the 1985 South African Grand Prix. Yep. And coincidentally, that was also the last time the wreaths were presented to the podium finishers. So some things which were good, some things which were bad. Like I said, positive to neutral, I would say. And I would also put it this way, that, after seeing Hamilton's heroics yesterday, I would have loved to see him on pole position, because we are so tuned to the driver who's fastest in qualifying starts the race from P1. That's what we are used to. Although the rules in Formula One say that the driver who starts on P1 is called as the driver who's got pole position, right? And the example of this being is if, I think 2019 Mexico, that's what somebody, tweeted on Twitter, that Max Verstappen had a pole position. He was fastest in qualifying, and then he had a 3-place grid penalty. Yeah. And Checo, I think it was Charles Leclerc who started then from P1. So he was counted as the driver who started from pole. So lots of nomenclature-related things that I think will get sorted as the event sort of goes, as this format goes forward.
And a word on the packaging as well. Oh my word, Formula One, you absolute beauty. They nailed it with those intro graphics where they had those virtual backgrounds all the way through. They nailed it with the sprint grid that we saw right there. They nailed it, especially with the onboard cameras where you could see the name of the car up ahead as if it was a racing simulator. That got me in my heart right there. That was absolutely superb. And all the way through, it just felt like they fed something to the commentators, saying that, just hype it up a little bit more, build it up to be something more special than it is. Because after the first lap, Crofty and Martin Brundle were like, they will all just follow each other, they'll all just trail, they'll not take risks. Talk about that now, which is what they did after halfway part. So that got me a bit baffled. It is what it is, though. But still, a lot of more fun stuff all the way through as well, Kunal. A lot more stuff to the Sprint King thing as well.
Yes, the Pirelli Speed King. That's what,
Yeah.
something new that Formula One sneaked in. They didn't really make a big hullabaloo about it, saying, "Oh, by the way, there's a new term we are going to use for the driver who takes pole, but won't start on pole." Right? That's the language we speak. And the strange part here, Soumil, and I'm going to make a reference to something that we experienced, when I was working with Force India as well. Right?
Hmm.
So the strange part, firstly, with the Pirelli Speed Kings is the fact that with the whole V races one and the whole diversity thing, what if there's a female driver who comes and
That's a
takes pole
good
position?
point. That's
Right.
a good
And we are
point.
so attuned to having a Formula One driver as male that Speed King fits in well. Right. And the Force India reference out here was, when we launched the One from a Billion Hunt, I worked on the marketing campaign. And this was 10 years ago when the tagline was, "Are you the god of speed?" And then guess what happened? There was a female that came into the top 10 who could have won the One from a Billion Hunt, because she came into the top 10 from hundreds of drivers who signed up to get themselves assessed. Now imagine if a female came and we were still calling it the god
Grooming.
of the god of speed, right? So just a bit of tweaking that I guess will happen in the time to come. But your point about packaging was brilliant. The TV graphics were at a completely different level. The camera angles just looked
Yeah.
really much better as well.
Yeah, and a word on the point you mentioned, 100%. That is absolutely spot on. I think the future, of course, more towards gender neutral words in cases like this one happens in Norway. That's where Kunal lives. That's just the ideal country all the way through. Less on Norway, more on tomorrow's race, though. That is the final point we have to discuss. And implications are major. Again, as we discussed early on, the first time ever that Russell finishes in the top 10, but he doesn't get a point for that. How grueling is that sort of stuff? But that's one thing. I think the more serious implications come all the way at the back of the grid, because Sergio Perez, as we briefly discussed right now, he is in a hot soup, but we've seen him do just that at Bahrain. If anything, he has one more lap extra than what he had at the first race of the season, in this case, to make a recovery.
Absolutely. He's Mr. Sunday if, George Russell is Mr. Saturday. So it'll be great to see him start from the pit lane. That's what I presume they're going to do, and then literally grow, climb his way to the top 5, maybe even the top 3, who
Yeah.
knows. And, we saw, I think the one thing that the teams would be smarter about in the race tomorrow is how their competitors' tires were sort of responding in a short stint, like a 17 lap stint. We saw that, Max Verstappen had blisters. It didn't come onto the broadcast, but Valtteri Bottas said he had blisters as well. So, tire degradation will be an issue tomorrow, and the teams already have a little bit more information about how their rivals' tires are going to degrade, and that will sort of help them choose some strategy. And like we saw, Mercedes went on a split tire strategy
Hmm.
already for today's race. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. And if we were to make a funny joke about the whole F1 sprint, it could very well be that tomorrow's race is very similar to the F1 sprint. We have an exciting start in a couple of laps, only that we have to wait 90 more minutes to see how boring it could get
Yeah.
before the checkered flag drops. So I say that in a lighter note. It may well be a very exciting race. And I remember, Soumil, you and I hosted a fan meet in Mumbai
Yeah.
a few years ago. This was, I think, 2019.
Yeah.
And that British Grand Prix was absolutely epic.
Like the 2021 was, or like the 2018 one was, like the
Yeah.
2017 one was, like 16 was good. Hamilton had an amazing race. This track never fails to deliver. I just have a slight feeling though. I hope that the action has just not been preponed by a day, and so we just end up getting a big lump of nothing on Sunday. That's my hope. I hope that is not the case finally. But I'm going to put you on the spot right now, Kunal. We know that it's very likely going to be a Verstappen win, but the whole top 3, what do you reckon that's going to be for tomorrow?
I think we're going to have a Verstappen, Hamilton, Bottas. They've made history with the number of times they've appeared on the podium, and they're just going to add to that number. That's my gut feeling.
And what about Fernando Alonso? He's been the star of today. He's the star of Sunday as well, coming through.
Yes, he's been the star of today. I think he's probably going to hold station. The quicker cars literally got through when they needed to, which was literally the McLarens. It was great to see Alonso versus Vettel in the fight, and I glad, we were also discussing they share and the respect they have,
Yeah.
right? And it to me, it's just the way that George Russell got his time to shine on a Friday as well as on the Saturday, and him scoring a point would be absolutely brilliant.
Absolutely. My apologies right there for the slight internet issue on that video. But that is it, folks. That is all from us right here for the sprint qualifying review. If one thing I have to say to you before we leave, watch out for Leclerc versus Norris tomorrow. That is going to be an action-packed battle. But that's it from us here today. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. And I hope you had a good time with sprint qualifying. We shall see you on Sunday evening for the full race review. Until then, it's goodbye and see you next time.
See you next time. Bye bye.